Hi everyone, this is Himanshu, and in this lecture we will study about the GM crops. Now, GM means the genetically modified crops. Now, the transgenic GM plants are those that have been genetically modified using the recombinant DNA technology. Now, actually, the genetic modification is done to confer a particular trait to the plant with the following properties. So these properties can be like the increasing the yield of the crop. This can be the one of the trait, or it can be the increasing the nutritional content. This can be one of the trait, nutritional content of the crop, or it can be the developing the resistance to the abiotic stress, which can be like a temperature, salinity, the herbicide resistance. This can be the abiotic stress. You can write it here itself, like salinity, temperature, etc. Or it can be also like biotic stress. Now the biotic stress is something like like insect resistance crop. So these can be the few of the properties, and example can be the BT cotton. Actually, the BT cotton is the only genetically modified crop that is commercially allowed in India from 2002. So that is actually important. That is the only genetically modified crop that is commercially allowed in India. Now, there are the few regulations of the GMO in India, and these regulations are basically the genetically modified organisms, the GMO, and the products are regulated under the Environment Act 1986. So Environment Protection Act 1986, and apart from that, India is also signatory to the Cartagena Protocol on biosafety. Now the Cartagena you must have read about in the environment section, because I have discussed it there. So so basically India adopted the biosafety rule under the Environment Protection Act in 1989, and also called the rule for the manufacture, use, import, export, and the storage of the hazardous microorganisms, genetically engineered organisms, etc. And accordingly, the genetic technology, the genetic engineering, including the gene editing techniques, they are also regulated under the Environment Act 1986. Apart from that, there are also the regulatory authorities. So let me write it here. Regulatory authorities. And these regulatory authorities are like the GM crop, that is basically the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, GEAC. Now the GEAC is Ministry of Environment and Affairs, MOEF, Ministry of Environment and Forest, and it is basically the final approval authority for the environmental release of the GM crops. So this is basically, you can say, the final approval authority for the environmental release of the GM crops in India, and including the confined field traits, and it also includes the approval for the commercial cultivations of the GM crops. And about the GM foods, so this is about the GM crops. Now when we talk about GM food, it is mainly the food FSSAI, basically Food Safety and the Standards Authority of the India. So FSSAI, you must have heard about it. So FSSAI actually regulates manufacturing, storage, distribution, sale, and the import of the GM food. So this is what it does. This is the role of the FSI. So if you want me to write here, then for manufacturing, for storage, for distribution, and what left? The sale and import. So all these things are regulated by the FSI. So this is mainly about these things. Now, as we are discussing these things, so it would be better that we should also know something about the BT cotton, because as we have said that it was the first GM modified crop which is allowed in India. So a bit of information about this also is required. So let us write it here. BT cotton. Now, in short, the BT cotton is the only genetically modified crop, as I told you, which is commercially allowed in India from 2002, and this was developing a resistance to the pink worm ball attack. That is basically the. Let me write it here. That it has been modified actually for developing a resistance to the pink bollworm pest in the crop. So generally what happened, this was a basic pest which was appear on the cotton and it was destroying it. So in order to make sure that it become resistant to that, we created a BT cotton. Now this was done by using the two genes, that is basically the CRY1AB, you don't have to remember the names, and CRY2BC genes from the soil bacterium that is called there's a soil and there is a bacterium over that, which is basically called the Bacillus thuringiensis. Okay, fine. Yes, BT. So from this we have taken its genes and we have transplanted the genes to the cotton seed. So this is what happened, and we got the BT cotton, which is basically resistance from the pink bollworm pest. So this was a BT cotton. Similarly, we also have something called the HTBT cotton. Now HTBT cotton is basically the short for the herbicide resistance BT cotton. Herbicide resistance BT cotton. Now the cotton seed is inserted with the CP4 genes from the soil bacterium. Here the name of that soil bacterium is Agrobacterium tumefaciens. So this is basically tumefaciens. So this was the name of the bacteria that you can remember. Maybe sometimes they can ask. So for the BT is the Bacillus thuringiensis. For the HTBT is the Agrobacterium tumefaciens. They have used it to make it the herbicide resistant. So this produces a modified protein glyphosate which makes it a herbicide resistant. So because of this, it modified protein which is called glyphosate. That is important and you should remember, I think, which makes it herbicide resistant. So they can ask in the prelim that in the herbicide resistance, which protein is responsible and which one was edited. So it was a glyphosate was edited to make it herbicide resistant, and it is actually not allowed to be cultivated in India at present. Similarly, we also had a BT Brinjal also. Now it is also genetically engineered by inserting a gene from the soil bacterium Bacillus thuringiensis, the same one with the cotton, for its the insecticidal property. Means because of that the insects won't ruin the brinjals. Now actually the gene disrupts the digestive systems of the insect that feeds on the crop and thus killing the insect. So since 2010, there is an indefinite moratorium on the commercial cultivation, and it is still in discussions that whether we should include it or not. So this was mainly for the BT Brinjal itself. So that's mainly about the GM crops. So in the upcoming lectures, we will study more about like miscellaneous things regarding the biobanks, national stem cell registries, which are mostly in the news regarding the biotechnology. So let's catch you in the next lecture. Thank you guys.